So today we're focusing on lyrics, and I think both me and Max identified last week that we struggle with lyric writing in general.
Yeah.
Much more comfortable with the musical side and creating the music, and then it comes to adding words to the melody, and it's very difficult. So we have both brought some lyrics with us this week that we're going to analyze, and if there's any from a song that you can access really quickly, feel free to chuck them in the mix and we can talk about them. If there's any lyrics that you're like, I wrote these and I'm not sure about them, or if you have any that you feel like you have a lot to say about, that'd be great. I think it's really interesting to look at sort of there are so many different ways that we can write lyrics. And actually one thing that is something that I think about in music in general, and it can be applied to songwriting as a whole, is thinking about the two ways that we write music. And I'm probably going to try and refer to this quite a lot over the next few weeks, because I think as a musician we have to make a choice where we sit. So either we make music for ourselves or we make music for other people. Both completely valid. I personally, through my experience of being in bands and trying to become a success in whatever way, I really struggle writing music for other people. I went to a songwriting camp last year, and it was really great. I learned an awful lot about myself and about music in general. But one thing that I learned, which is the most important, is I just don't want to. I'm not very good and I'm not very comfortable writing for money. So writing something to a brief or whatever that means. There are, however, many ways that you can do this, like writing for other people. It might be that you want to be an indie band that tours the UK and can make money off of touring the UK every year, and that's your income as such. But that doesn't mean that you need to be like pop music or commercial. It's a very different type of success, but it still, in my mind, means that there are creative sacrifices that might have to be made. And I think that can be difficult, and especially for me, I find it very difficult. And I admire anyone that is fine to do that. I think it's a really great skill to have. And I don't know about either of you, but especially on the Isle of Wight, there are a lot of bands who want to make it, and then they just play like standard indie music, and then they market themselves terribly, and then they expect something. And I think that's the thing that I'm like, well, if you want to be successful in that way, you do need to actually you need to sell yourself a little bit, you need to market yourself, you need to think about it, you need to sacrifice the creativeness to sell it, I think. Which is why for This May Them, it's not for that, it's just sort of for a bit of fun, and I don't ever expect to make money off of it. And so when we're thinking about lyrics, this is again very important distinguish to make, whether we just want to be as creative and as personal as we can, if we want to do stories in our lyrics, or if we're like, no, I want to know how to write lyrics that sell. They're all very different skills, and they're all really valid to think about. So firstly, we're just going to go around and chat about sort of how you write what you write lyrics about. Are you someone that has a very formulaic way of doing it, or do you try and change it up all the time? Where do you think, what are some lyrics that you've written that you really love? Like, what style are they? That sort of thing. So just a general overview of your lyric writing so far. And Emily, if you could also, for me, just in general in songwriting, if you could just say what you find the most easy and what you find the most difficult in songwriting in general. So if that makes sense, whatever that might look like. So do you want to go first?
Yeah, okay. I think that, well, to like, as a bit of a background, I think when I very first started writing music, I think without understanding like the technology side of it was definitely something that pushed me back. I didn't really know how to go about writing songs successfully, where I could just write a song. So I thought, okay, how am I going to be able to do this? And I think the most easiest way for a lot of people is to have, you know, an instrument on your side so that you can write a song alongside an instrument. But I know a little bit of keys and a tiny bit of guitar, and you know, I picked up a guitar again sometime last year, and I was like, do I really want to spend all this time learning guitar as a main instrument? Probably not, for me personally. But that's when I started getting into Pro Tools again, and like asking Steve for like lessons and how to actually lay down a song where it made sense with like a structure and, you know, all the like really basic things. And then obviously skills then came into it, and that's just sort of where like songwriting for me was made easier, because I just didn't know where to go with songwriting and how to go about doing it properly without having to learn an instrument. So I suppose like with samples and things like that, it's just become something that's I really enjoy, and just I find so much easier now as opposed to what I did. But obviously that comes with like setbacks. I think at the moment it's like the most difficult thing for me is finding a sample, like one simple sample that has like a melody with it, that I can use in a song and not be so picky with it. Like when I'm on Splice, sometimes I'll be on there for 5 minutes and I'll find a sample and I'll be like, oh my god, I really love that. But other times I could be on there for like 4 hours because I'm just so picky, and I think, is that actually a good sample or is it a bit naff? And then that's when I sort of stop myself now, and I just don't use the sample. Like I just But yeah.
What do you find the easiest, would you say?
Easiest?
Yeah, like what do you think is your the best skill you have when it comes to songwriting in general?
Yeah, I think it is probably now getting things together to make the song. So like before it was like I had one sample and I sort of sing over that and send it to Steve, who would then build the track. But now I think it's more easy for me to build the track with a whole bunch of samples. And then for Steve to like pull them out and put new ones in, or like you to pull them out, put new ones in, and just do it that way, sort of thing. Or Max to pull them out and put new ones in. I think when it comes to songwriting though, I would probably say that it depends on my mood as to what I'm writing. I think that's a really cliche thing to say, and it's really easy for people to say that, but like where I've had a lot of, like in my personal life, a lot of breakups, all my songs seem to like relay around breakups and like bad love and stuff like that, you know. So I try and not write about that, but it's just because I've had so much of that in my personal life, it's just so easy to just write about it, I think. So that's another thing that I think I just need to look at, because otherwise it's just going to be a whole Taylor Swift thing, if you know what I mean.
I think as a singer, it's really interesting what you've sort of talked around, that concept of writing songs without like an instrument, or without the chords and the music theory behind what happens when you sort of play guitar or whatever. And I think there's probably a lot of singers, and also I think there's a bit of an attitude in music that people don't really think you're a musician if all you do is sing, which I think is not true at all, because I think writing a good vocal line is probably the most important part, especially in the commercial world of selling a song. And it was interesting when I did a songwriting camp in the spring of last year. I got chucked into being a producer because there were so many top line writers that they just needed people to make the stuff underneath it.
Yeah.
And it's a real art, actually. And that's why I think collaboration is very good for that kind of thing.
Yeah. Key.
Finding the right people that you can work with all the time to sort of, how many singers are there that just have producers that they work with all the time? Probably quite a few.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think, Max, about that.
I really like that way of working that you're talking about as well, of being able to put samples in and shape. We were talking sort of on it last week a little bit. How you can use it to inspire your end product rather than necessarily be your end product. And like, especially when we were arranging Authority, some of the chord changes and stuff like that wouldn't have happened without some of those samples.
Yeah.
That's not a chord that I play. That's not something I go to. Like, I think it can inspire things that you wouldn't expect. I think is the important bit about it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Is possibly difficult.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? They open up this whole other world, but then there is also the side of samples of making them fit exactly in a tune. It's quite hard, I think. I was finding working on a project where I needed a like a horn sample. I was like, I could sit and I could write a horn part on Logic like sounds, but it will sound terrible. So I went on to Splice to see if they had like a good one. And it sounds great, but you're very restricted with what chords you can put with it. You have to fit with what they have. And so in some ways it's really opens up a whole new world of songwriting, and in others it can be quite restricting, especially when there's so much to look through, like you were saying.
Definitely.
So it's very interesting. So in terms of lyric writing, you sort of mentioned lots of songs about breakups and maybe wanting to expand what you write about. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Cool. And Max, a little bit about what sort of lyrics you write at the moment.
Oh, that's a really hard question.
Lots of different
I don't really know. Sad ones.
Sad songs.
That's pretty much the underlying theme. They try and have some sort of level of commentary about something, but that can be a really mundane thing or quite an important thing. It doesn't sort of really change how I write, bizarrely. So I've got songs about growing up and songs about getting old and songs about falling out and global like crises and important things, and then stupid songs about getting drunk in a park.
Yeah,
but written with the same sort of style.
Yeah.
I think trying to provide commentary and story is pretty much my go-to. Without necessarily much melody, I think would be fair to say. Like my songs aren't over the top with melody or clever with melody. It's more about what it's being said rather than how it's being said.
Yeah. I think also writing melodies and lyrics that suit your voice as well is really important, because I think, and that's something you learn as you get older, because when you're younger you're like, I need to sing exactly like this. And then you get older and you're like, why am I trying to do that? To sing like me. And then you'll write. I mean, the way that I write lyrics normally is that I'll write the melody, I'll write all the music, and I'll spend ages on the production. I go, I need to add a vocal line, and then I will be trying to sing a melody and words just happen. And I don't know, you probably find this as well. They're just like, you think of a phrase that every time you sing that melody, you sing that phrase, and it's really hard to change it once it's embedded into your head.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah, that is so annoying.
Which is actually,
like,
sorry,
you know, if you like find an old song and you're like, I'm going to reimagine this and make it more exciting, and then you can never change it.
Yeah.
Don't know how to do it. This is the only way I know.
Yeah, and that's probably something I really struggle with, is because as soon as I've written a phrase, I'm like, well, now I've got to write a song that makes sense for this, whatever this means. Which is the lyrics that I've bought to share is exactly that. There's not many of them, but it was a song that I started writing recently when I wrote the vocal melody, and I love the vocal melody, but the lyrics don't really. It feels like because I just used them to write the melody that they don't really mean anything, which is fine. Like, and then it's trying to work out if you care about that or not. And I feel like there's a lot of confusion that I find, especially when lyric writing, because you'll find that you get like caught up in your expectation of what it should be. So before we move on to the next bit, so a little history of literally just my lyric writing. I've been in 2 major projects where I've been the songwriter. One of them was when I was in uni, and it was called Charming. And it was we ended up with like 6 of us at one point. There's a lot of people having an input in a song that you start, like, I don't know about you guys either with this, but when I start with the song, suddenly giving it to 5 other people is really difficult. It can be quite, you're just like, don't change it too much. And so I started to write lyrics that were just stories. Like, I'd read a newspaper or I'd find influence somewhere, and I'd just make it as far detached from me as possible so that it didn't matter. It's like, well, if you change this song, it's fine. And like, the lyrics were fine and they worked for the genre that it was. But then it was when I do This May Them stuff, which is sort of my solo. Basically, it's me. I write the songs, and then no one else can touch anything creatively. That's all. That's just all my creative decisions, basically. But now they're just really ambiguous, and some of them are very specific about specific things, and some of them are like ambiguous feelings. And it would be nice to sort of merge those worlds together, I think. So what would be cool next is to sort of look at some lyrics that we've all written. So Emily, do you have anything that we could have a look at, or did you want a minute? I can get Max to go first if you want.
Yeah, I probably do, actually. Thinking about it, I have Fall, which is about a breakup, of course. Let me see.
So then Fall, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, how unorganized.
No, it's all right. I can just cut this bit of video out, so don't worry.
Winner editing.
Or Max, do you want to go first, and then I'll find it?
I can do. I'm just finding mine.
I should have been like, now there's 5 minutes for you to find your lyrics. Should have said.
I found some. There we go.
Who's ready first? Max.
Yes, the best song.
What? This isn't your favourite one.
Isn't it? Wait, let me see. Oh, no, it's not.
Why is it only sent some of it? That's so weird.
And when is how it finishes.
Apparently. Yeah, that's how I end that song.
Mid-sentence. There you go. So did you want to talk us through them a little bit?
I can do. So this is an odd one because I had a busy old week, so I just thought I'd get one out there. I had a lot of lyrics. So this is a song about growing up, really, and how your friendship groups change primarily, and develop. So all of these, we don't laugh like we used to before in the chorus. It's pretty much saying that sort of stuff. I'm being waved at by my housemates. Just staring for a door routine. Yeah, so it's all just sort of trying to build. The first verse is based on trying to build an idea of what situation I'm talking about, and then developing it into. So trying to explain that, hanging out in a room and what we used to do when we were younger, and then as we get older, how it looks like in this song going wrong at the scene.
Cool. And so, how did you find writing this when you did it? Did it come out really fast, or?
This is one of the quickest songs I've ever written.
Yeah.
I think I've written in about 15 minutes.
Nice.
Just pretty much played it through 3 times. It was finished.
Quick.
Which is the fastest I've ever written. And about something that I wasn't feeling that passionately about, bizarrely.
Yeah. Sometimes that's nice though, isn't it? Something that's like very universal is very easy to relate to it, I think, which is nice. And sometimes the things that are most relatable can be slightly mundane, and that's okay. Doesn't mean we shouldn't write songs about it.
No, definitely.
True.
I think there's that thing, isn't there, with being a musician, and you watch interviews of people and they tell you about how deep and meaningful their lyrics are. And sometimes I just kind of want someone to be like, they don't really mean anything, but this is what I thought they meant. But they're not like, I find there's a bit of a trend of people that are doing really well in music, like the top stars, and they'll do that thing where they're like, this album's just like really about me, and it's just really like I put myself into all of these songs. And sometimes you listen to the songs and you're like, they're really great songs, but I don't see what are they saying about you, like what do you mean? I don't think music has to be that either. I don't think it has to be a here is my soul situation.
Yeah.
I think you can be one side or the other, can't you? And then there's people that are trying to hit both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
That don't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Like Bon Iver's first album is probably my favourite, best thing I can think of. That's an album that's got a piece of someone in it. Like, everything put into it.
Yeah, and it's interesting though with Bon Iver, especially as his albums have gone on, as the lyrics are harder to understand. It feels like he's gone from this really personal record with Forever Ago to wanting to sort of distance himself from people knowing too much about him, if that makes sense. But all very good albums, to be fair. But his first one is definitely way more intimate.
Yeah, it's got that sort of. That's what sort of been lyrics is.
Yeah.
The sort of this true in your face version of what's happened.
Yeah.
Don't try and fancy it up. Just you don't necessarily need rhymes. Or just get it done.
Yeah. Get it down. So, Emily, do you have your lyrics at the ready?
Yes.
So, do you know how to get onto the chat window?
I think.
If you click the people, and then you can click on the.
Oh yeah, chat. Oh yeah, I got you.
Chat.
Gotcha. I'll just copy them and paste them all in.
Yeah.
I haven't got the middle 8 though. I don't know where it's gone. Just tried to find it, but I can't find it.
That's all right.
Oh, what's going on here? Oh. Oh, right. Okay. What? Oops. Yeah. I just have to keep copying. So.
Does it have a limit of how much you can put in? Is that why?
Yeah, I think so.
Ah,
There we go. We're there.
we are there. So do you want to explain a little bit about this tune?
Okay, so Fall is a breakup song, but it's not a sad one. It's realizing it's like the in between of being really upset about the breakup and being completely over breakup. So you're just sort of telling yourself, do you know what, you're actually worth more than what that person put you through. I had a relationship a few years ago where my ex was basically really quite controlling and quite passive aggressive as well.
Yeah.
So when they tried to contact me, I don't know, maybe like 8 or 9 months ago, just got me all mad and het up because obviously I'm with somebody new now, and
Yeah.
it was like they hadn't gone through the motions of getting over a breakup. So it just made me all angry one night, and I was just sort of sat in my room like, do you know what? I'm actually so over that fool. And I just started writing. I found a sample on Splice that I really liked before that night, and I just opened it up and I was like, I'm just gonna roll with it and get all these emotions down because I'm so annoyed. And an hour later, I had this song, but it literally had one sample, to which then I brought to Max and we worked on it together first. And yeah.
Cool. It's interesting, like when you're talking about writing too many breakup songs or whatever. But everyone, I would guess, has a very similar specific story behind it. So this was a moment for you, the way you just went, I don't care about you anymore. And I feel like it's still, and let's face it, that's a very, very relatable feeling. And I think maybe in order to start looking at writing other things, it's worth accepting the fact that you do write about those moments and breakups, and because you have experience in it, and that's totally valid. And there'll be someone out there that needs to hear this, and I think that's really important.
That's very true.
I
think it's very like easy to, slate or feel slated against with breakup songs, but at the end of the day, you are right. Like, they are just probably the most, opinion, but maybe the most relatable type of song there is, whether people like it or they don't like it, because it's just something everybody goes through at some point of their life.
Yeah.
But I think instead of hopping on the train of, I don't want to write about breakup songs because they're so hated, I think maybe I should just, keep writing as many as I can until I've sort of got to my limit of where I'm like, now I can breathe. I've got all my emotions out.
It's all done now.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's as well interesting, because I think writing good love songs, I think, is much harder than writing some sort of song where you're angry about something. I think I've written one genuine love song and I'm so proud of it, and I don't think I'm ever going to try it ever again, because I think it's
Jumping.
No, that's more of a to put it bluntly, that's probably more of a sex song than it is a love song, if I'm being brutal. But there's one that I've got, a song called Sea Salt, which is just about that pure love emotion, but very specific to a specific person. And it's the most that I've ever been as honest as I can in a song. But I don't think I could ever do it again. I think it's too, it feels like too much to get that much out there. But no, I think breakup songs are totally valid and let's face it, like people, Taylor Swift is the one that people always have a go at, whatever, and it's like, and she's probably the biggest selling artist of our time, I would guess, like one of them at least. It's like, you might hate, and I'm sure Justin Bieber has his fair share as well, and Ed Sheeran and all those top artists. every breakup must feel very different, and I think you can. I don't think there's anything wrong with it personally.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, true.
some of the best tunes in the world are about breakups.
Yeah. You find a song on every artist that's a breakup song.
Yeah.
I imagine.
My favorite, which I don't know if it technically is a breakup song, but it was Ali and AJ, and it was called "Potential Breakup Song," and it was out when I was very young.
Oh my god, I love that song.
Such a tune. Exactly. And it's interesting. I'd be interested to know both of your opinions on this, actually, when we're looking at sort of the commercial music sector. So when people are writing music to sell, how important are lyrics, and what, like, is it possible to have a good musical career writing whatever you want, or is there like a formula in terms of the commercial market?
I think that there is a formula that has worked for a really long time in regards to structures of songs and chords in songs, and I don't think, whether people like it or not, I don't think that it would change for a really long time. Like, you wouldn't have a song that was verse, chorus, verse, pre-chorus, verse, or whatever somebody wanted, and for it to be accepted, unless you were a massive star and already had the fan base. But coming into like the music industry as a new artist, I think that you just have to follow the structure, which is a shame and sad, but being too different and trying to be innovative is sometimes worse than just doing what is currently working. Does that make sense?
No, I totally agree. The word innovation is really interesting, because I think you probably have to apply it to very specific things. If you want to innovate in commercial music, I think that's incredibly hard, and I think, like you said, you probably have to be already pretty well established. And I think it would have to be a phenomenon, or almost like just something that, like a bit of a musical revolution, or like the breakdown of radio and labels, because the reason that there's that specific structure is because of the payments on radio play. And I think, like, hearing the vocals have to come in within a certain amount of time, and then the chorus has to have happened within a certain amount of time, and it's not allowed to exceed 3 minutes 30, because otherwise they have to pay you twice rather than once. And what your labels want is for it to have radio play. So there's a very, it's very, I think it'd be hard for a musician to break that. And if you think about Bohemian Rhapsody, which was one of the least commercial but most popular songs there is, that didn't have an effect on the industry in that sense, in that we still follow that basic structure. It's interesting. Sorry, Max, you go.
I think the importance of lyrics stays whatever you're doing, though. I think it just changes, like, the focus and the emphasis on them. It's the difference between my stuff and Emily's stuff, though. Probably the easiest polar opposite example. Emily had my lyrics and I had her lyrics. Both of the songs wouldn't be great by themselves. But put them in our styles and they sort of hold themselves up. I definitely couldn't sing what Emily sings about. Actually, you could probably get away with singing most of my tunes. But I'm just being a bit one-sided. I couldn't sing what Emily sings. I think it just depends on. You don't get instrumental pop songs. You need to be there, and they need to have something catchy. But whether it's the hook or the story that changes focus, important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's nice. I think that's a nice feeling, though, isn't it? Like that someone singing your songs would have to change it immensely for it to suit them.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what I feel like a true cover is when someone has to just completely change it. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. Like I think covering Queen songs, for example, you have to be very careful.
Yeah.
Like you have to be really careful, I think. And there are some artists that it's just, I think that's the ultimate goal, isn't it? You want to be so unique that people can't actually do you any justice by just singing it.
Yeah.